Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to attempt to do a comprehensive guide to Devinah Cosmetics. I'm going to swatch and talk in depth about each shade in my collection and compare them amongst each other. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing to my channel, and if you're not following me on Instagram already, please give me a follow over there. That's my main platform. Let's just get some quick housekeeping out of the way. So this video is not sponsored and should not be interpreted as an official endorsement of the products featured. I received 6 of the 56 shadows in PR, the Phantom Orbs collection. The rest I purchased on my own, so I consider myself a Devinah customer for the most part. I do have a non-affiliate code, which is my username SEEKINGSHIFTS. It will save 20% on a decent amount of the items available for sale, with some exclusions. So Devinah is a US-based indie brand that sells mostly single eyeshadows. It was established in 2015 and it's owned by Deandra, who's Deandra Irene on Instagram. You may follow her. She's very active in the indie makeup community. So they have several collections and they're all based around a theme, and the theme is mostly related to what the shadows actually look like. I did chat with Deandra a little bit about this because I was kind of asking her, what is your process like? Do you come up with the theme first, or do you come up with the collection theme like after the shadows are made? So she did say it's really based on what they look like. For example, a lot of the shadows are based around like candy or sweets, and it's because they literally look like candies, like they're candy colored. So I'll kind of get into in each collection. If she told me a little bit about the background, I'll explain it when I get into that collection. I'll ask her how she comes up with the names for the shadows, because you'll see like some of these names are a little bit bizarre. And she said she likes names that are 1, fun and unique, 2, separates them from every other brand, and 3, sometimes hard to pronounce, because hopefully they encourage people to Google the meaning, because it's always good to learn new words. That's it for the intro. Let's go ahead and get into the different collections. I'll go in order of when they were released. Starting off, we have the Willy Wonka Xploders. There are 7 shades in this collection and I have 2. Deandra said that Willy Wonka had a candy called Xploders and it was perfect for this collection since all the eyeshadows are named after real candies. So in my notes, I say that they have a soft texture with varying particle size ranging from medium small to quite small. They have a sparkly finish and can be sheared out. Nerds is a soft sky blue duochrome that flips to gold. On the eyes, you really just see the gold for the most part, but you do see that sky blue around the edges. Bear in mind, they don't really have descriptions of each shade on the website, so I'm really just going based on my own perception. If you disagree with anything I say, like if you have one of these shades, feel free to leave it in the comments. This one I would say has more like a medium small particle size, and it can be built up. Like you see, it's pretty opaque when it's swatched here, but it also shears out really nicely and it can be just like a soft gold sheen. I find this to be a very approachable, quote unquote, colorful shade, and I think any neutral lover would enjoy this. Marshmallow Pillows is a hot pink with blue sparkles that shift from blue to purple to that same hot pink in the base. It's very, very fine and thin. Like the particle size is very small and it feels kind of delicate almost. If you were to pick it up with a brush and apply it in a way that's more like dispersed, it would be very sheer and about as subtle as a hot pink with blue sparkles eyeshadow can be. However, it can definitely be built up, or if you apply it with like a finger like I did here, which is a much more concentrated way of applying it, you can see it's definitely not as sheer or subtle as I was describing. So here are the 2 Xploder shades I have swatched together, Marshmallow Pillows on the left and Nerds on the right. Hopefully in this close-up footage you can kind of see what I was talking about, how the particle size in Nerds is slightly larger than that of Marshmallow Pillows. I will of course do a lot more comparisons later, but I also wanted to swatch each collection together. The Galaxy Dust Shifters are available as singles or in a bundle of the top 7. And there are 2 at the bottom that are only available as singles, so I have all of them, the bundle and the 2 singles, and I'll go over each one and which is included into the bundle or not. So Deandra said these are all named after galaxy phenoms and they remind her of space type colors, and I can definitely see that. So the way I describe this, like, I had a lot of trouble at first, like, trying to see, like, the difference between each shade. And the way I can describe it to you is it's almost like if you went one notch over on the color wheel for each one. Like, one shifts red, orange, yellow, and then the next one shifts magenta, red, orange, etc., etc. So I'll explain that in each shade as well. Cygnus shifts from red to orange to gold, and I would say the red is a bit on the cooler tone side. Like, I'd say it's more of like a wine red than a true primary red. This is probably the least unique type of shifting pigment out of the Galaxy Dust shifters, and I say that because I have two other versions of this shade from other brands. Torch from Clionadh and then Crimson Eclipse from Terra Moons are like basically the exact same type of red to orange to gold shift. So if you have a larger indie single collection, you probably have a version of this. But if you don't, I mean, it's really pretty and it's $8, so you can't go wrong. Magellanic shifts from magenta to red to orange. So you see what I mean about how each shade kind of goes over one notch on the color wheel for each of the shifts. So instead of red, it's magenta, instead of orange, it's red, and instead of gold, it's orange. So this one I would say is more unique to my collection than Cygnus. I don't have any exact dupes to this color wise. So if I was going to say pick one or the other to someone that has a larger collection, I would say go with Magellanic over Cygnus. Starfire shifts from a purple to magenta to red, and from a harsh angle I do see some orange as well, so it's a bit shiftier than the first two shades. This is a really pretty purple shade. It's going to read mostly purple from like straight on, and I think it has like a warm terracotta or like orangey base, because when you sheer it out you see that showing through. So this would work really well with a warm tone look. Overall, just a really pretty purple shade. Skyla has a burgundy base and it shifts from indigo to purple to magenta to red, and I also see a bit of orange from a really harsh angle. So this one is definitely a standout. I think this might be my favorite of the Galaxy Dust shifters because this is like a straight up multi-chrome, and it's sold at that $8 price point, or $6.40 if you use someone's code. So I mean, you can't beat it. This does look intimidating maybe if you're not super experienced with color, but it's actually very approachable. And I know I said it has a base, but when you sheer it out, it kind of like dissipates. So it's very, like, if you're new to multi-chromes, this would probably be a good one to start with, because it could be a good one and done shade, or you can pack it on, sheer it out. It's just a really good one. Messier has a brown base and it shifts from like a teal blue to indigo to purple. So I was talking to one of my Instagram friends, Teresa, and I sent her a swatch of this when she was making a Devinah order, and she was like, oh wow, I thought this was just like a typical blue brown pigment, but it definitely is special. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Like, it definitely is that blue brown that you see a lot from, like, MAC has one, ColourPop, but this is just, it's different. Like, it's very, very wet looking and juicy and sparkly on the eyes. It reminds me a lot in concept of a shade we'll go over later, Mystic Moon Pie, but this is the more like saturated, colorful version. Mystic Moon Pie is more of the like neutral, desaturated version. Asteria has a burgundy base and shifts from green to blue to purple to magenta. This is one of those eyeshadows that, like, if you put it on your eyes, you are going to see, you're not gonna have to do any work to see that shift. Like, mostly you just see the green to magenta, but because they're so far apart on the color wheel, like, people will notice. Like, people are gonna ask you what's on your eyes. Like, it's so visible. Like, some of these, like, you have to, you know, do a little bit of contortion to get the shifts to show up, but this one, like, if you're looking for something that's gonna really shift in any setting, this is the one. Celesta is a gold that shifts from gold to green to teal. It has a brown base, and this is probably my least worn of all the Galaxy Dust shifters, just because I find gold eyeshadow to be incredibly boring. It's really pretty. Like, if you like gold, you'll like this, but I don't know. I don't really gravitate towards them. Okay, so all the eyeshadows I just showed you are the ones that are available as a bundle or singles. So the next two I'm going to show you are only available as singles, but they're still part of the Galaxy Dust Shifter collection. Centaurus is like an orangey bronze that shifts to gold and then green. This is a really special warm tone shade, and I did a series where I was like expanding Natasha Denona palettes with singles, and this one I put with a Natasha Denona bronze palette because I just feel like it has very similar vibes to the tones in that palette, if that gives you any indication of what it looks like in real life. I think if you like warm tone eyeshadows and spicy neutrals, this would definitely be a good one to pick up. Tucana has a tan base and shifts from pink to orange to gold, and from a harsh angle I do see a little bit of green. This is like a cult classic Devinah shade, and for good reason. It's very beautiful. It's a kind of common type of shifting pigment, but I feel like this is one of the best versions that exists that I'm aware of. It's just very sparkly and shiny and reflective on the eyes. Like, this is probably my favorite version of this shade in my collection. So here are the first 7 Galaxy Dust shifters all together. I don't know why I didn't just swatch all 9 together. I'm kind of annoyed at myself, but anyway, here they are. We have Celesta, Asteria, Messier, Skyla, Starfire, Magellanic, and Cygnus. And here are the 2 Galaxy Dust shifters that are only available as singles. From left to right, we have Tucana and Centaurus. Next up, we have the Sugar Drops collection, and Deandra said she named them this because the raw pigment looks like straight up sugar, which makes sense because they're iridescent. So they have a medium particle size with one exception, Taffy Bomb, which I'll get into when I go over that shade. They're very soft to the touch and pretty loosely packed in the pan, so they pick up very easily with a brush, and a decent amount picks up, so you kind of have to be careful. They're all iridescent, so they look white in the pan besides one that looks yellow, and they have a very sparkly and reflective finish. If you keep up with my Instagram stories, you know that this collection was ruining my life for the better part of 2022. So I had 2 of the shades and I freaking love them and I use them so much. And I had a tragedy. They both broke to the point where they could not be salvaged. And I was waiting and harassing Devinah all the time to restock the collection. Finally, they did recently. I literally had an alarm set, which I can't even tell you the last time I did that for a restock, but I bought the whole thing right away and I have been so happy with them. Gumbles shifts from a soft yellowish gold to teal to blue. This one looks yellow in the pan, but I would still consider it an iridescent because it really has no base whatsoever, and it functions and acts the same way as all the other iridescents. I'm actually surprised by how much use I've gotten out of this since I purchased the collection, because like I said, I'm not like super into gold shades, but I feel like it just goes with everything. Like, even though like you definitely see that yellowish gold presence, it kind of just like melds with any look that you use it with. So I use it a lot to just like add a little bit extra or to my inner corner, or just, you know, to top something off. I really like it. Sugies shifts from green to blue to purple. So kind of similar to the Galaxy Dust shifters, I would say each one of the sugar drops kind of goes over like one notch in the color wheel for each of the shifts. As you go through them, you'll see that. Not quite as cut and dry as Galaxy Dust shifters, but you'll see what I mean. Taffy Bomb shifts from teal to blue to purple, and I see a little bit of gold from a harsh angle. So this one, as I mentioned earlier, for some reason has a completely different texture and finish. It has a large particle size and it's pretty chunky and flaky. So because of that larger particle size, it does have more visible shifts because I guess the larger particle like catches the light more. I think that's how it works. I don't know, but anyway, it's really pretty. It's probably my favorite like tones of shifts out of all the sugar drops. I just wish it wasn't so chunky. Cake Bomb shifts from aqua to teal to blue, and this one I feel like is another one of those shades that really goes with a lot of different looks, because from straight on it's kind of desaturated, like it's not quite as intense as some of the others in terms of like color pigment, and then you see those shifts from the angles, so I feel like it's more like versatile in that way, goes with a lot more. Boom Sour shifts from teal to blue to indigo, so it is similar to Cake Bomb. The difference is it's cooler in tone and it's more saturated from straight on. Like you see that tealish blue a lot more from straight on, so it's not quite as versatile, but it is more like, I guess, pigmented. Puffles shifts from blue to indigo to purple, and I talked about this with Glimmer in my Clionadh video, which this is very, very similar to, but I feel like it's not too often you see a iridescent eyeshadow that's like a true primary blue from straight on, so I really appreciate having this option in my collection in this formula. Okay, so the next two shades, I do have them swatched together because, y'all, I cannot for the life of me tell the difference between these two. And I'm not trying to be shady, but like, if you can see a difference, please let me know. But I have as a description that they both shift from indigo, purple, pink, and gold. And sorry, if you're just listening, that I don't know why you would just be listening, but anyway, the top is Cavitea and the bottom is Soda Swamp. So Soda Swamp was one of my absolute favorites. It's a one that I accidentally destroyed, so I'm not mad to have two of it, but I don't think if you're a normal consumer that you need both. Again, let me know in the comments if you can detect a difference. I thought maybe I got sent two of the same shade by accident, but other people have said the same thing. Last up, we have Yum Licks, and this one shifts from violet to pink to gold. So it does look mostly pink here in my opinion, and I feel like it does read mostly as a pink on the eyes, but if you put it next to a pink iridescent, which I'll do later, you do see that violet presence. Okay, so here we have all of these sugar drops swatched together. We have from left to right Yum Licks, Soda Swamp, Cavitea, Puffles, Cake Bomb, Boom Sour, Taffy Bomb, Sugies, and Gumbles. Again, if you can see more of a difference between Soda Swamp and Cavitea here, let me know, but I'm struggling to find it. And this is in like ring light dual setting where I film all my shifty shadow content. Candy Cake's formula is described as a cross blend formula, and I don't know what the cross is between. I feel like it does remind me of a cross between like the Xploders and Galaxy Dust Shifters, and I'm just pulling this out of my ass. Like, I don't know if this is true, but they're like more piecey and sparkly than the Xploders, but not quite as like gritty or textured as the Galaxy Dust Shifters. Like, they do have some texture to them, and they're not as soft as the Xploders, but again, they're just a lot softer than the Galaxy Dust Shifters. There are 6 shades in this collection, and I have 2 of them, and I have my eye on 2 more, Pancake Bubbles and Sweetie Sunbeam, but let's get into the ones that I do have. Creampuff Cuddles is a hot pink with blue sparkles that shift from blue to purple to pink. This is very similar to Marshmallow Pillows in a lot of ways in the colors. Maybe a little bit less of a blue presence here. It's more like muted in that sense, but obviously the main difference would be the formula and the formula differences that I described. If you recall, Marshmallow Pillows was like very, very delicate and fine in a small particle size, and this has that slightly larger particle size, and it's a bit more textured and dimensional. Mystic Moon Pie has like a cool tone taupey mid-tone brown base, and then it has sparkles on top that shift from a silvery bluish teal to purple to burgundy. This one, if you've ever asked me for a recommendation from Devinah, I've definitely told you Mystic Moon Pie. Like, every single person who I know who has this shade, regardless of their skin tone, of their makeup style, whether they love colorful or neutral makeup, if they have this shade, they love it, and I love it too. It's one of my absolute favorite spicy neutrals. Like, this is one of those shades I just get really passionate when I talk about it, because it's just so wet looking, so perfect. It goes with anything. You can wear it by itself for like a glossy wet looking eye, or you can layer it over some mattes. It's just perfect, and it's $8 or $6.40 with a discount code. You cannot beat it. Here are the two shades I have from the Candy Case collection swatched together. We have Mystic Moon Pie on the left and Creampuff Cuddles on the right. So here are the Aurorae Flares shifters, and I also have 3 multi-chromes that are not in that collection, but I just grouped them all together because they're all like the black base jeweled multi-chrome formula, same texture, finish, all that. So these are the first of all the eyeshadows I've shown you so far that are not at that $8 price point. These are $15 or $16, and you cannot use a coupon on them. And I believe it's because the pigment is expensive to manufacture and there's a lot of it in each one of these eyeshadows. These all have a black base and very small particle size, so they're very silky and shiny. I talked about my thoughts on black base multi-chromes in my Clionadh video. I find that I don't use them too often, but I would say this is my favorite type of black base multi-chrome like this. For one, they don't crease on me like the Clionadh shades do, and also I just find them a little bit more approachable. I feel like maybe they just blend easier. I don't know exactly what it is, but I just find that I do tend to reach for these over any other type of black base multi-chrome if I'm looking for something like that. First up, Australis. This one shifts from magenta to orange to gold to green, and from a harsh angle I see a little bit of like emerald green or almost teal. This one is like probably the most common type of shifting multi-chrome pigment. Like in like any eyeshadow palette that has a multi-chrome, it's probably going to be very, very similar to this, and most brands that do multi-chromes will have their own version of it. Chromosphere shifts from like a bronzy orange to gold to green to teal, and from a harsh angle I see a tiny bit of blue. This is super grungy and super shifty. I don't know if this is like technically an orange or a green. Let me know, what would you consider this like, as if you had to pick one color to categorize this as? Phenomenon shifts from a bronzy gold to yellow to lime to an emerald green. This one is discontinued, but I still included it because maybe you have it already and you want to see how it compares to other things in Devinah's lineup. I believe Clionadh Weathered is the equivalent to this in their lineup, and this was discontinued from Devinah because I think they didn't have access to the pigment here to create it. Hemisphere shifts from a muted olive, taupey, silvery tone to green to teal to blue, and from a really harsh angle I do see a bit of purple. This is my most used and definitely my favorite of all the black base multis from Devinah. I have the biggest dip in this, and I definitely will hit pan at some point. The reason why I like it so much is because even though it's like very green from most angles and very shifty, from straight on I would say it's pretty neutral, adjacent, and approachable. It goes with a lot of different looks, and I feel like for like an everyday situation, even though I don't really believe in like quote-unquote wearable shades, it's just like something that's easy to reach for in terms of a jeweled multi-chrome. Borealis shifts from teal to blue to indigo. This is probably the least shifty of any of the black base multis from Devinah, and from straight on that like teal tone is pretty desaturated. I feel like this is one I expected myself to be more inclined to reach for, just because from straight on it's not super like intense, but at the same time, like if I'm gonna use a black base multi-chrome, I want it to be like super shifty for all the effort it takes to like blend it into a matte. Polaris shifts from a greenish teal to blue to indigo to purple, and from a really harsh angle I see a tiny bit of gold. This is definitely a lot more shifty than Borealis. Like if I had to go back, I would just get this instead. It's also more saturated from straight on, but again, if I'm going to use a black base multi, I feel like I would rather it be more shifty. Thermosphere shifts from royal blue to indigo to purple, and from a harsh angle I see a little bit of like almost like orange, I guess. This one is not quite as shiny as the other ones in this collection. I definitely think it's something to do with that royal blue pigment. Something I've noticed when we were working on my collab shadows and like tweaking them, the ones that have this like certain blue pigment are drier. Here they are all swatched together from left to right. We have Thermosphere, Polaris, Borealis, Hemisphere, Phenomenon, Chromosphere, and Australis. Okay, here we have these Star Chasers, and we're back to the $8 price range for each shade. There are 6 shades in this collection, and they can be purchased as a bundle or as singles. I have 4 of them. And these I have in my notes, they say they are a similar formula to the Candy Cakes collection, maybe just a bit more texture, but they're still soft, pick up easily with a brush, and they don't have too much of a base. So let's get into the shades that I have. This shade is called Lynx, and it's like a soft orange that shifts to gold and then a little bit of a desaturated teal. This one is super dimensional. I don't know if you can see it in this swatch, but like I just love the way this looks on the eyes. It has a lot of different color flecks in them, but there's so many and they're so small that I can't really tell what colors they all are. Like I see a lighter gold, a green, a teal fleck in there. It's just a really stunning shade on the eyes. I definitely recommend this one. This shade is called Vela, and in the pan it does look very yellow, but once it's swatched out, it's more of a like muted, soft, goldish yellow. It shifts from teal to blue to purple and a little bit of pink too. So surprisingly, this was the most similar shade in my collection that I had to the shade VR Fire Opal in the Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction palette. I almost didn't even bring it out to compare with that shade because, like I said, it does look so yellow in the pan. So I was pretty shocked when I swatched them side by side. So if you've been wanting that palette and you just for the VR Fire Opal shade, maybe you might want to pick this up. This one is called Orion, and it's a soft lime with sparkles that shift from gold to green. I'm not really into these types of green shades lately. Like I'm just kind of sick of them. I don't really reach for them at all. I mean, it's pretty if you like this type of shade. I'm just like so tired of like limeish soft green shades. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I really have to say about it. This shade is called Aquila, according to all the multiple videos I looked up on how to pronounce it. That does not sound right to me, but anyway, I have written down that this reminds me of the sparkly sheer based version of Polaris. So it shifts from that like greeny teal to blue to purple to magenta at a really harsh angle, but it has texture and sparkle and no black base to it. So I definitely reached for this one much more than Polaris. Here are all the Star Chasers swatched together from left to right. We have Aquila, Orion, Vela, and Lynx. Here we have the Halo Moon collection. These are all iridescent multichromes and they are $17 each. You cannot use a discount code on these. And Deandra said that each name has a meaning that relates to the moon or light in some way. They remind her of moon bows, which is basically like a halo around the moon. There's quite a variety in texture and finish in this collection, unlike a lot of the others, so it makes more sense for me to tell you the texture and finish of each shade as I go through them. And there are 6 shades in this collection. I actually did have the 6th one, Esmeralda, and I ended up giving it away to a friend just because I had 3 of the exact same formula and type of iridescent multichrome, that like red to orange to gold, in the exact same formula and finish, and I just felt like it was kind of excessive. There was nothing wrong with it, I just wanted to share the love. This one's called Zira, and this one's definitely my favorite. I have almost fully panned it. It's a spicy orange to gold to green, and I see a tiny bit of teal from a harsh angle. The texture is kind of hard to describe because it's not like fully smooth, but it's not like chunky either. It's got a little bit of texture to it, but it's also very soft. When you apply it, it definitely smooths out, but it's also a bit more high impact than like a fully smooth shade with a super small particle size. This shade is called Proteus, and it's a gold to green to teal to purple, and it has a little bit of pink too. This is like a very common type of iridescent multichrome. I mentioned this in my Clionadh video. Like most brands that do iridescent multichromes have a version of this. This one is definitely very flaky with a large particle size. It's quite textured, so I don't really have any that are this texture in this type of pigment. This shade is called Marama, and it has the exact same texture as Proteus, but it shifts from teal to blue to indigo to violet to pink. So again, these shades with a larger particle size are going to be inherently more shifty because there's like more surface area to catch and reflect the light, and you can see those different shifts. This one's honestly so pretty on the eyes. It looks like a fairy vomited all over your face. Called Nokomis, and it has the smallest particle size and feels the driest out of all the Halo Moon shades. Again, this goes back to that specific blue pigment and what I think is just a dry pigment. It shifts from royal blue to indigo to purple to pink, and from a harsh angle I see peach and it almost like disappears. This has like a UV like quality from straight on when you catch that blue shift, but from other angles, like I said, it's like completely translucent. This shade is called Aylin, and it shifts from like a hot pink to orange to gold to green. This one's really shiny and reflective, and it has like a small-ish particle size. It has the tiniest bit of texture, but it's not quite as slick as like the jeweled multichromes. It definitely has a more reflective finish than sparkly, but I wouldn't say it's like a super like smooth and slick shade like the black base multichromes from before. Here are all the Halo Moon shades swatched together from left to right. We have Aylin, Nokomis, Marama, Proteus, and Zira. Here we have the Moonscapes collection, and these are not shifting pigments, they're just super sparkly, textured, and kind of chunky shades. They all have like the same silver sparkles over different bases, so I don't think you need all 6. There's 6 in the collection. I have 2 of them. Again, I don't think you need all 6 because like if you shear them out, they're all going to look the same. They're just going to have that silver sparkle left over. So I would say like maybe pick, if you're interested in this collection, maybe just pick like 1 or 2. This shade is called Fire Hunt, and it has like a muted rose gold base, so it reads as mostly just like a spicy neutral. Again, if you shear it out, you're really just going to see those silver sparkles, and it does stain a tiny bit on me. The shade is called Earth Shine, and it has a sage green muted base with the silver sparkles on top. I picked this up because the tone of green just looks super unique, and I kept seeing people post about it. It just looks so like special and unique, and it definitely does add something to my collection. I'm very glad to have it. Here are the two Moonscapes shades swatched together from left to right. We have Earthshine and Fire Hunt. Here we have the Carnival Sweets collection, and this is actually an extension to the Xploders collection. I would say the texture and finish is pretty on par with those. Well, the shade Nerds, not Marshmallow Pillows. They have a semi-sheer base, and there are 7 shades in the collection. I have 2 of them. Sour Spanx shifts from a soft peach to gold to green to teal, and it's the most shifty I've seen of this type of shade. I have Meteorite from Terra Moons and Reserve 2 from Shine by SD, which are very similar, but they don't shift quite as much as this. And this is also a little bit shinier, but still a little bit sparkly and textured. Sprinkle Whips shifts from a soft like lavender purple to pink to gold. This is a bit drier than Sour Spanx and a bit more flaky feeling, but I think this goes back to that specific, like, I don't know if it's like the blue pigment that's used in it or what. Are my 2 Carnival Sweets shades swatched out. Left to right we have Sprinkle Whips and Sour Spanx. Here's just a one-off shade that's not part of any collection called Fairy Fire. I'll show a swatch soon, but it's sold for $17 and not coupon eligible. Here's Fairy Fire swatch. It has a sheer yellow base, and it's just from like a greenish teal to blue to purple to pink. I have a few versions of this shade which I swatched all together in my Pat McGrath video. I remember people went crazy when this was first released just because it's so shifty, really transformative. If you don't have any versions of this, I mean, this is a really good one. Here we have the Laveau collection. There are 4 shades in this collection. I only have one. It has a very similar texture to the Galaxy Dust Shifters, and all of them seem to be deeper and a bit grungier. This shade is called Seance, and it's actually super similar to the shade Thermosphere from the Aurorae Flares collection. It's got that royal blue to indigo to purple shift. I think it does have a black base, but it's not quite as hard to blend out around the edges as the jeweled multichromes, and it's sparkly and textured. The Phantom Orbs collection. This is the one I was sent in PR from Devinah. There are 6 shades in the collection, and I have all 6. And there are 2 subcategories. There's like a velvet finish, which are the top 3. These have a silky semi-sheer finish, very small particle size, and they're very smooth. They're almost like airbrush on your eyes when you apply them. And then the sparkly finish ones, they're not quite as sparkly as textured as some of the duochromes I showed earlier, but they definitely do have some texture to them. They're also very reflective though, and very shifty. They do have a base, and 2 out of the 3 of them have stained a little bit on me, so just be aware of that. Again, I don't really care about staining, but just like to let people know if that's a thing that happens. These first 3 are going to be the velvet finish, and starting off we have Verdent Frost. This shifts from peach to gold to green to teal. This one is my favorite of the 3, and it kind of reminds me of Sour Spanx from the Carnival Sweets collection, but it has that silky and velvety texture and perhaps a little bit more shifty. This one is called Soul Laze, and it shifts from a pink to gold to green. It's actually very, very similar to Aylin. Like, I honestly don't think you need both. I would just say pick which texture sounds better to you. Even though it has a slight pink base, honestly, it's going to look identical on the eyes, just that slight variation in texture. This shade is called Water Mist, and it shifts from a greenish teal to blue to purple. Again, this is kind of similar to a few of the other iridescents that we went over before. It does have that very slight base, which does make a difference in how it shows up, but I don't think you need this if you have like a lot of the other iridescents. This shade is called Midnight Nova. It has a periwinkle base and shifts from lavender to pink to gold to green to teal. This is very similar to a few shades I have, like Revenge from Shine by SD, and I believe it's similar to Lucid Lavender from Touch of Glam, etc. You might have something very similar to this in your collection, but if not, this is probably my favorite version of this type of shade. The shade is called Nocturne Ash. It has a warm purple base that shifts from pink to orange to gold to green. I thought this would be an exact dupe to a few shades I already have, like Glam Rush from Shine by SD or possibly Royalty from Clionadh. It's more goldy and a little bit warmer than those shades, so it's definitely a little bit unique to my collection, and this one does stain a little bit on me. One is called Luna Storm, and it's one of those like pink rainbow shifting shades that has a hot pink base. It shifts from gold to green to teal to purple from a harsh angle. Again, this one is a little bit different than the other shades I have like this because there's a stronger gold presence. Like you can really see it from straight on, and this one also stained on me a hot pink. Here are all the Phantom Orbs shades swatched together from left to right. We have Luna Storm, Nocturne Ash, and Midnight Nova. Then for the velvet shades, we have Water Mist, Verdant Frost, and Soul Laze. Just going to do a quick overview of the matte shadows. I have 6. I wish I had more, but like whenever I'm shopping with Devinah, I put way too many things in my cart and I have to trim it down, and usually the mattes are the first to go because I am a sparkle goblin. But I do have 6. I really like them and I do reach for them a lot. They're all unique and kind of desaturated or murky colors, like kind of grungy. They're soft and silky, easy to work with, but the one thing is they're very fragile and prone to cracking. I think all of mine have cracked at one point, and I have repressed them, which is not a huge problem for me, but I do store them in palettes that I move around a lot, so that's something to consider. Here are all the mattes swatched out from left to right. We have London Fog, Persephone, Juncia, Nabal, Frisson, and Suki. Starting off with comparisons by color, we have Australis, Starfire, Magellanic, and Cygnus. Next up, we have 3 sheer or semi-sheer tones that all have a little bit of peachiness to them. So from left to right, we have Verdant Frost, Sour Sphinx, and Gumbles. Here are some oranges. I always thought of Chromosphere as a green, but like it definitely is mostly orange from straight on. So we have Chromosphere, Centaurus, Lynx, and Zera. Here are some bronze, golds, and yellows. From left to right, we have Phenomenon, which is discontinued, Celesta, Fairy Fire, and Vela. Here we have greens and green adjacent shades. So from left to right we have Earthshine, Hemisphere, Asteria, Orion, Proteus, Water Mist, and Sugies. Here we have teals and warmer blues. So from left to right we have Messier, Polaris, Borealis, Aquila, Morama, Taffy Bomb, Boom Sour, and Cake Bomb. Here are some more blues. From left to right, we have Thermosphere, Seance, Midnight Nova, Nerds, which should have been included in the last one, but I forgot it, Nokomis, and Puffles. Here are some purples. From left to right, we have Skyla, Nocturne Ash, Sprinkle Whips, Soda Swamp, and Cavitea. Here are the pinks. From left to right, we have Marshmallow Pillows, Creampuff Cuddles, Luna Storm, Tucana, Laze, Aylin, and Yumlicks. I think my thought process in grouping these together was like all neutral or neutral adjacent shades. So from left to right, we have Centaurus, Sour Spanx, Fire Hunt, Messier, and Mystic Moon Pie. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it or found it helpful, and please subscribe if you enjoyed this type of content I'm uploading every week. Bye!